The 68's after dark. It's not quite dark, but we just finished what we thought was going to be a huge game. Instead, today we found out that the newest number one team in the country is the defending national champion Baylor Bears. We'll have a visit from Bears point guard James Akinjo. We'll talk about Purdue, the now former number one team's recent struggles, and also with the two guys I got here with me, we can't not talk about the crappiness that is the ACC. I welcome in former Wake Forest guard Randolph Childress, former NC State guard Archie Miller. But let's start, guys, with the big one was the heavyweight matchup, right? I mean, Baylor, Villanova, culture versus culture in Waco, and instead we get a complete dud. And how surprised were you, Randolph, watching this game that it was never a game between Baylor and Villanova? Baylor just absolutely blasted them in every which way.
I was shocked. I mean, we knew both teams would defend, and we knew both teams would compete. But 36 points, in a game, you expect that in a half of Villanova, if not more. So I didn't expect a high-scoring game, but I expected a more competitive game than that. I didn't think anyone saw that coming.
Arch, what surprised you the most? For me, it was Baylor's defense, to be honest. I mean, they lose Davion Mitchell. They lose Mark Vital. Those are two of the best defenders in the country a year ago. And honestly, it looked like Villanova could not dribble. Like Jermaine Samuels could not dribble in this game, and he wasn't the only one. Gillespie couldn't get a shot off. It looked like, honestly, it was like a mid-major opponent. It looked like a bye game out there, Arch.
I mean, their defense is smothering. I mean, it really is. And it's startling, I think, when you really watch them over and over, how athletic and their size across the board is just so overwhelming. Really, they play with two small guards at times, but pretty much from that point forward, their versatility, their length, their size, between Brown and Sokan, the two freshmen, I mean, those guys have just sort of not only fit in, but they brought even more talent on the floor than they had. Mayer, 6'9", between Thamba and their bench and whatnot. But their talent level and their size across the board, when you start dealing with their length, they're smothering. And Villanova, as a team that really uses the dribble and the post-up game, isolations, they really just didn't have the ability to go through or by Baylor today. And, I mean, their defense was incredible. They held them to 22%, and all those numbers are obviously, probably historic lows, for Villanova.
Yeah, I'll give you some. I mean, the final score was 57-36. Like you said, Villanova shot 22 from the field, 22 from three. It was the fewest points and the lowest field goal percentage in the Jay Wright era at Villanova. They were held under 40 for the first time since 1979, Villanova was, and 36 points tied for the fewest by a top 10 team in the shot clock era. Baylor's now 9-0. They've beaten Nova 3 straight times. I saw it 2 years ago. I was at Myrtle Beach in what I thought was the best game of the year. And Baylor ended up winning the Myrtle Beach Invitational by beating Villanova. How about this? Here's one that's crazy, and it shows you how dominant this Baylor team has been over the last couple of years. They are 30-1, or 31-1 in their last 32 games. The only loss coming against Kansas, if you remember last year when they came out of the quarantine, and they had like 10 guys get COVID. So they weren't themselves. I mean, they've been almost flawless for the last 2 years. Like, to me, the biggest shocker, again, the defense and how they've been able to rebuild in Waco. Scott Drew, this isn't Kansas. This isn't Kentucky. This isn't Duke, Carolina. I mean, when you're ranking the top programs in the country, not in the last 2 years, but just take out of the equation what they've done, and you say, like, jobs that you would want. Where does Baylor fit, Randolph?
You picked the words right out of my mouth. I don't think rank it really high. I've been impressed with the way he's been able to get transfers down there. There's so many other factors that come into play in getting them down to Waco, Texas. It's not in anyone's top 20, but he has been, arguably the top program in the country the last three, a couple of years, and definitely over the last year. And right now, I haven't seen the team be as dominant as they've been all year.
Hey, if they don't cancel the NCAA tournament a few years ago, they may have won it that year.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the reality of it.
Villanova is the culture program, right? Like that's the one
Right.
everybody else is measured by right now. They've won 2 titles in the last 5 tournaments, but I think you can make a case that Baylor is right there with them because, like you said, they could have had another one. They might have been favored or right there with them a couple of years ago. And I tweeted something, and I'd love to know your guys' both opinions on this because you're both kind of old school.
Right.
And Archie, you were like an old school coach, but you're younger, but your dad certainly coached you in an old school manner. You and Sean. Randolph, I know you grew up. You're about my age, so you're kind of old school too. Scott Drew coaches differently, guys. He's our age.
Right.
He's 50, 51, but he coaches with like kindness in a way, right? It's positivity. Glass always half full. I said, like, guys like Billy Clyde, and I call him Bully Clyde Gillespie, should have to spend a week down there with Scott Drew and understand that you don't have to be an asshole to coach these days. And I think there's different ways of skinning a cat. We know that. But Scott Drew's way certainly has worked. And it's not a MF or I'm going to jump you every day. I'm going to tear you down to build you back up. What do you think of Scott Drew's kind of the way he's coached these kids?
I just think like at the end of the day, however you coach, you can't be one way some days and one way another. And when he was probably at the very, very beginning of Baylor and things weren't very good there, at some level, he was the very same person. And
Right.
I don't think he's changed a whole lot on the exterior as he's had a lot more success. I think people are paying a whole lot more attention, but he's always been a great recruiter.
Yeah.
He's always been well liked. And I think at the end of the day, how he coaches his team is him. And when you're authentic that way, it's very, very hard to ask questions. It's very, very hard to nitpick. That's him. And I think if you would research him as a person all the way back 20 years ago, it's probably changed from a basketball coach perspective on how he does things. But as a person, I'm assuming that Scott's always probably been pretty much the same way. And I think, the authenticity plays a big part in how your guys respect you.
I think anybody that, older in their 50s or late 50s, it doesn't matter. I think if you cannot coach the game the way we were taught and coached. I think everyone understands that now. And he's sticking to his personality. There's still fiery guys out there that are still the same. They're still sticking to their personalities. But when you're that way, I used to always say, guys, if you're coaching them hard, you got to love them harder. And so if you're loving your guys and they know it, or you're tough on them, that's fine as well, as long as the players know you really care about them. You just can't show up in between the lines that 2 or 3 hours at practice and then scream at them and think they're going to respond. But the way he's doing it, it obviously reflects to this generation of kid because they're transferring down there. It's not one of the top 20 cities by any stretch of the imagination, but they may be the program. And like you said, Archie, if it's not for the missing the tournament, year or so ago, then they could be the back-to-back defending champions.
No question about it.
The crazy thing is too, I mean, you lose 4 starters from last
Right.
year, right? You've got a new team that you expect. I was down there in the preseason and Scott was even telling me like, it's going to take time for these guys. All the returning guys are in completely new roles, right? Whether it's Matthew Meyer, whether it's Adam Flagler, a Presbyterian transfer.
Yeah.
Kinjo's brand new. We'll talk to him about that here in a little bit. And then you bring in the freshmen. And one of the freshmen, Langston Love, is out for the year. And he was like a top 50.
He's a highly ranked kid.
Yeah. So there's not enough superlatives to be able to throw Scott Drew and Baylor's way. And I think a lot of it also, guys, and you guys can speak to this. And Archie, you and I have talked about this a little bit. Staff, how important it is to have a staff. Jerome Tang has been there for 20 years, basically since he got there. Right. He's brought in high character guys. workers. The one thing that always was said about Baylor, now, one thing that was said early, when they beat you for a guy, I heard it all the time, they cheated. Because nobody can lose to Baylor for a player without saying they cheated. And the one thing that everybody kind of learned over the years was, okay, you know what? These dudes work their ass off. They absolutely work their ass off.
No question. Look at the success that his coaches have had upon getting jobs. I mean, it's not as if, they roll the ball out there every day and just say, hey, let's go recruit good players and we'll just coach them up. I mean, number one, their transfer guys aren't coming in many ways from, although James is from Arizona, he may be a little bit of an outlier. Some of the most highly successful guys they've had have come from UNC Asheville, Presbyterian, whatever it may be. And I think they dedicate to skill development. I think they dedicate the year off that those guys had heavy into making them better, and they make them a part of what's going on. Clearly their practice environment and what they do every day brings out the best in them, because you don't play the way they play. You don't practice light and play hard. It just doesn't work that way. And then, I think, he does have a great staff. Jerome's been there for every day that he has. He's had a staff that's had tenured guys for 5-6 years, and then guys who have left them. If you just look what they're doing at the programs that they're at now as head coaches, having a ton of success as well. So there's more in the bag than just, hey, recruiting and whatnot. They identify guys, they make them better. There's clearly an environment there they believe in when they're there every day working at it. And now I don't want to say it's running itself, but I think guys coming into Baylor right now have an expectation of how you do it. And, winning is the byproduct of it, by no question about it.
I'd add this, Archie, we always say this, and you just alluded to it. It's when we're coaching it, we're leading it is one thing. But when your players start taking control of that team,
right,
you're taking off. You're really good. Anyone that's coached that has a really good team, there's a standard and a culture that your players are setting the tone for. And you best believe it's happening at Baylor right now. I would imagine now he's probably identified his captains and coached those guys, and they're just running. Man, I think they're, not to say they're in cruise control like they're not playing hard.
You know it as well as I do. Randolph, you know it as well as I do, man. The other thing you can't take for granted, and Villanova's obviously another example, they just won the whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have players on your team that have advanced in the tournament, have won in the tournament, have literally, they cut the nets down, but you just can't put a price on that type of experience / momentum, confidence. You know what I mean? I mean, whether it's Mayer improving or Flagler being in those games last year, man, there's a lot of weight that carries for those guys advancing the way they've advanced in the last few years. They're used to winning. They know how to win.
All right. So who is the number one team in the country right now? Is it clearly, we've gone through it now. It's Gonzaga in the preseason.
I'm going to just put it this way. Baylor is a clear-cut number one. They probably could have been arguably could have been up there after they won the Bahamas, but you got to go Baylor 1, and I'm going with Alabama number 2.
Ooh, interesting. Alabama number 2, even though they lost to Iona earlier this year.
I tell you one thing, they've had 2 of the most impressive wins I've seen. I haven't seen a team with those 2 type of wins that they've had in the past 10 days or however many it is. I mean, to do what they did, go all the way out to Seattle and put it on Gonzaga the way they did. And then that game last night was a war. I mean, that was an absolute war last night. And for them to come out with that type of a win, back-to-back weekends, I don't think anyone's had a week or at least 2 statement type wins. And you know what, Iona, maybe that's what they needed, but they have got a unbelievable team right now in terms of where they're at in the last week.
I can't argue that. I mean, going to Seattle and winning there, no one wants to do that. And then to come back and play Houston, absolutely nobody is looking to schedule Houston. Nobody's looking to schedule Houston. You already know. That's one of those teams. When Sampson calls you, like, man, get out of here. Like, I'll see you in a tournament.
That's one of those ones where you debate if you should go play them neutral somewhere. I mean,
right. You don't even want to be on their side unless you have to tournament in a bracket, MTE, let alone schedule them in this part of the year when you're in the SEC. So kudos to those guys. I think they're the top 2 teams as far as the competition that they played, and losing to losing to the Coach Pitino isn't a bad thing. Many have failed.
Yeah, don't be surprised if he doesn't
yeah.
beat a few more people, you know?
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me. He gets a 1 or 2 in the tournament. He just gets it done. But Alabama's been, Coach Oaks has those guys going. They've been outstanding.
Yeah, the only other team I put in there that I think lays a claim is still Duke, right? I mean, they go to Vegas, they beat a top 5 Gonzaga team. And I know they lost to Ohio State and Columbus. It was a few days later. I think, honestly, I don't want to say that was poor scheduling, but I think they lost their legs.
As Randolph knows, the ACC challenge is a pain in the ass. I mean, it's a total pain in the ass. It doesn't matter where you are, what you're doing. When you have that draw, you know you're going to have some type of a really hard turnaround. I mean, you just are.
You actually want to schedule your MTE somewhere on the East Coast, because if not, you don't know where you're going to be. That's the brutal part. I remember years ago we were out in LA and then had to travel to play Penn State. Oof. So it's like getting in Death Valley was a nightmare. We actually had it was just brutal. I don't even want to describe the trip to you guys.
Yeah, it's a hard deal. Hard deal.
Who you play, because you got no control over whether you're home or away. In the ACC Big Ten Challenge, and then you get a game like that. But the one thing about Dukies, like we said, they don't play many road games, true road game, and that was a true road game, and that matters with a really young group of guys. As talented as they are, they still have to get some true road games.
Yeah, no question.
Listen, I think right now we kind of went through it a little bit. There's a tier of probably 8 teams, I think, that are kind of in the top tier right now.
I think you can go 10 teams. I think you can go 10 deep right now and feel really good that there's about 10 teams that could legitimately make claim to a Final Four run or, a successful deal. I got Baylor, Alabama, Duke, and then I would put Arizona and UCLA in the top 5 right now. Yeah. And then I would give you Kansas, Purdue, Houston, Villanova, and USC as another 5. I think those 10 teams.
Did you mention Gonzaga?
He did.
Okay.
Those 10 teams, Gonzaga is in there obviously as well, but 10 or 11.
That's 11 with the Miller math. Just so you know.
I would go. Put Gonzaga in there as well, because that's obviously an easy one. But I think those teams right there have established who they've played, who they've beaten up until this point, that any of them could make claim to being, an upper echelon team right now. But I think Baylor, and I would say that Alabama, and looking at it, Arizona's off to an unbelievable start with what they got going on right now. Duke is Duke. I think UCLA is UCLA. Kansas has been great. Purdue, that's a tough swing for them to lose the game they lost the other day and then find a way to win in overtime today. That's a sign of a good team. And Villanova's good. I mean, say what you want to say. They've really tested themselves as well. But I think USC, and I'm just stating the fact, I would not want to play Houston. After watching those guys play in that environment last night, I would not want to play Houston.
No, they're one controversial call that we'll get into in a little bit from going to Tuscaloosa and beating a really good Alabama team. So I'm with you. I don't think I put USC in that equation yet, Arch, but everybody else I'm good with. Everybody else, I think, Randolph, anybody that he forgot that you would throw in there?
You know what? I don't know if I see a Big Ten team yet that I'm ready to put in there. Right. If I had to guess, I mean, outside of, I don't know who else we're going to get out of Big Ten. I thought at one point in time, I thought Connecticut, but I don't know. They've kind of,
they're hurt. They're hurt too.
Yeah. They got to get healthy, and so Wisconsin, I was coming around until they just got bashed by 20, and so Michigan State. Auburn. We don't know how they're going to respond. So right now they're in that next tier of team. So I don't think Archie's kind of forgotten anyone. I mean, Tennessee, maybe.
There's a couple of times that Tennessee's really had, some tough days shooting the ball, man. I mean, they're obviously very good on defense and they're good, but, you watched them play against Texas Tech. And then I think the other game that they played was in the Mohegan, right? Yeah, they struggled in the Mohegan on the one game.
Yeah, they got
Yes, they just had some days they didn't shoot the ball real well. I just feel like all these teams have both sides of the ball covered. They can beat you if they have a bad day on O, and if the other team is, they could have they can win a lot of different ways. Like you just watched Houston play last night, and I mean, the rebounding, the offensive rebounding in general. I mean, it's you're not going to see that every night. You know what I mean? That's part of their deal. But it's been a good non-conference slate. I mean, it really has. Guys have been tested, and there's some teams probably that haven't played as strong as scheduled, but I think you got about 2 more weeks here before you start conference play that you're going to have a pretty good idea in January where you start. Now there's going to be about 5 teams that come out of nowhere here in the next couple of months that get hot and young guys get better, whatever it may be.
All right.
But Tennessee at least defends. I think they do. I think they defend.
They do, yeah.
Gives you a chance when you're defending. But again, now we're getting out of the cupcake schedule. A lot of people have scheduled cupcakes, and we joked about it off air. But some teams like Dayton, you didn't want to came out of nowhere. You don't want to play right now. You sure as heck don't want to play Houston. But now you're going to get into conference play, and no matter what conference you're in, it's going to be pretty tough for you.
Conference play always just kind of settles down, and I always felt like in conference play, regardless of what you did in the non-conference, you kind of have your way of playing against the teams in your league, and you kind of know. So that's why sometimes when you get in the league, some teams start to settle in and they start to just like get better because, a team like Michigan State, they may have some ups and downs, but when they get in the league play, they know what they're doing against you. They know how to play against you. Same with Purdue, and I'm sure in the ACC, there's some teams in the ACC that may be a little up and down right now, but they know how to play in the league. So sometimes the league settles you in.
So we were so high on Purdue as recently as a week ago, right? A week ago, we're saying they're the number 1 team in the country. They got those 2 big boys that you can throw in there in Edey and Travion Williams. Jaden Ivey looks like unstoppable when he wants to be. And they lose at the rack to a Rutgers team that was without Geo Baker. And then they probably should have lost today against NC State. I mean, they were down 10. Yeah, they were down 10 with 2 minutes left.
13, yeah.
And they ended up winning in overtime in Brooklyn. Ivy goes for 22. Listen, Zach Edey played 12 minutes. He was productive in the 12. But it was Travion Williams, 22 points, 12 rebounds, 9 assists, guys. 9 assists. Yep. He is their best passer, which is a great thing and a scary as hell thing for me. Right. Because I worry about their point guard play. I do. I worry about their point guard play and their defense. Although Travion was really, really good at Mohegan Sun guarding, I still don't know. Sasha, okay defensively. Jaden Ivey can be elite when he wants to be. But here are the numbers. Isaiah Thompson, 15 minutes today, 0 points, 2 assists. Eric Hunter, 30 minutes today, 2 points, 0 assists. Against Rutgers, they combined for 6 points and 1 assist. That scares the shit out of me.
Yeah. Here's the thing with Purdue. I think that number one, I've been in the rack. Okay. You play at Rutgers right now. That is a very difficult game. Okay. And Coach Pikel's as good as it gets in terms of having those guys ready to go. He's a great coach. They have some guys who have won some games in there. They know how to win at home. And if you'd have told me before the game started, hey, Purdue's going to lose to Rutgers in the rack tonight, that wouldn't have surprised me, on my own experiences being in there. Road games are hard, especially in league play. But I think what you saw today is probably a little hangover coming off that disappointment. NC State has a great recipe against Purdue with the way that they play. It really goes.
Arch? What is the way?
Randolph will tell you, Kevin does a good job. Number one, they're very athletic and they're very talented, and they can pick you up full court, and they can mix, whether it's man or whether it's zone. They break your rhythm. And Purdue is a rhythm team on offense who wants to run their stuff. They want to execute. They want to call their plays. And NC State immediately puts a halt to that. They slow things down. Their point guard has to really handle the ball and get him in stuff, or he doesn't even have the opportunity to bring it up at times because they take it out of his hands. So that's step one's breaking a rhythm. And I think, the other thing in the half court they do, they got length, they got talent, they can get in passing lanes. Purdue struggled early dealing with their speed and whatnot. And in particular, I think in the backcourt, their backcourt gave them a lot of problems. But to me, Purdue, best 2 players on Purdue's team showed up today when they needed them the most. Travion Williams and Jaden Ivey. And if you told me who's going to be first team all conference, it wasn't going to be Zach Edey. It's going to be Travion Williams. It's going to be the guys that have been there the end of the day. If Zach Edey has a great thing going, which means they have the ability to get him the ball right around the rim all the time, and he's doing work, he's going to play. When that's not happening, Travion's going to play. And I think they also Purdue showed their depth. They played a lot of combinations today trying to figure out the game, trying to get a group in there to kind of get them going. And right there at the end, they had Eric Hunter in there, they had Ethan Morton in there. Travion was in there with Edey and at times Gillis, but he tried a lot of guys. And I think they got good contributions from a lot of guys that maybe wasn't a lot of points, big steal here, whatever it may have been. But Purdue weathered a big week. They had a hard loss, probably didn't go home, went right over to Brooklyn. And NC State was a prime team to give them problems. I thought NC State would give them problems with the way that they play.
I think you're right about the distance. I mean, they stayed in Jersey. They didn't go home. That's an unusual schedule. These kids have been on the road for a long time. The other thing I think we got to think about is being number one is different for Purdue. They've been good, but they hadn't been number one, right? And so everybody's gunning for these guys at number one. And like you said, NC State is different because for Purdue to be a traditionally big team, they played really, really big. NC State is small ball, 1 through 4. They're taking you off the dribble. They're going to put you constantly in ball screens. So whether it's Edey or it's Williams, they're kind of in drop coverage. You saw Williams come up tonight, get a couple of steals. He hedged really hard, but they're going to be in drop coverage. I thought that was the toughest matchup as they're going to play against with that athleticism across the board. The point guard play is going to be
Braun is unbelievable as well. I mean, I don't
1 through 4. Helium,
Helms, yeah,
Smith,
right.
Cam, with Cam Hayes. I mean, those guys can play. They can take you off the bounce. So you can't hide against them. So I was impressed with Purdue coming out. I think Williams today was the one that impressed me today, not just because it's a triple-double. Well, you can tell they pressured him on the perimeter and they tried to push him off the block. Edey struggled to score when they kind of forward him and pushed him off the block. Williams felt comfortable popping out the three.
He's good off the
floor,
lane,
getting to his spots. So he set the screen, catch his ability to score and catch it off the move and pass is the difference for them. So when he's at the 5, I mean, he's a nightmare. He's going to be a tough out.
Hey, he was first team all conference a year ago. And I know he's settled in this year to give Purdue a chance, as their coaching staff has probably put it to him, this gives us the best chance long-term, to be the best that we can be. And you know what? He accepted that, but when the money's on the line, he's in the game.
He's playing.
All right, well, listen, guys, we got a special guest coming on here now. It is none other than the leading scorer in the game with a 16-point performance. 16 leads the game when you're in a defensive battle like this, and it is a Baylor point guard, James Akinjo. James started his career playing. He started his career at Georgetown. But then ended up playing for Archie's brother, Sean. So, James, can you hear us?
Yeah. We got you.
All right, there we go. All right, you are live, and you're talking to Archie Miller, who's the brother of your former coach, Sean Miller, and Randolph Childress, who scored a few points at Wake Forest back in the day, just a few. You're young.
James, I'm going to tell you this right off the get-go. You don't have the best crossover on this podcast. My man Randolph has the best crossover on this podcast. Okay, so let's just get that out of the way. Okay, I'll give you 1A. You're 1B. He's 1A in terms of crossovers on this thing.
Archie's 3, and I'm like 10. All right, I'm like 10. But listen, what was that game like, James? I mean, that game, all we heard about this year, and I was down there in the preseason. All right, you lose Davion. You lose Vital. You lose Jared Butler. You lose Maceo Teague. Your defense was better today than it was all last year. How did that happen?
Well, we feel like we know we lost a lot, but all of us, we all confident. So especially our guards, we didn't really feel like we was losing much when we, kind of re-upped and we brought our guards in. And our team, we take pride in individual matchups. So a lot of what you see on defense is us just playing with our chest, keeping guys in front. We want to help. We don't want to have to help too much. And so if you keep, your guy in front, you don't have to really do much help. But we got some great athletes, some great communicators, and that's what you're seeing out there.
James, the one thing I would say is, obviously, watching you play quite a bit in my time, over the last year as you transitioned over to Arizona. I know a lot about your game. You had a fantastic year a year ago. As you kind of came into this situation, did you have to change offensively very much, or can you just be yourself, what you're accustomed to doing?
I don't have to change at all. I think a lot of people they overlook my other abilities on offense. I mean, I've been in situations where I had to score the ball, but me just playing naturally. I'm a point guard. I got a pretty good flow of the game, so I'm not ignorant to the fact that I have NBA pieces around me. So every game, I know I don't need to score, but I know it's also going to be some games where I'm going to need to assert myself a little bit more than others. So it's all about just getting the flow of the game and just playing basketball and being myself.
James, when you can score the ball the way you can score it, I've been impressed this year with your playmaking ability. I mean, I know you're averaging a career high in assists, but coming into this year, I know you guys had new starters and a new team, even though the standard's the same. I was questioning or wondering who was going to step up and be that playmaking guard, and you've just naturally seemed to step into that role. Was that a mental adjustment, or was it just something that you just were never asked to do?
I didn't have to really adjust. I mean, I wouldn't ever ask to do that. Like my situation in Arizona, we had a lot of young guys, so I feel like I had to score the ball a lot of times. But if you put pieces around me, I think people always underrated my ability to make plays. I've averaged 5 assists in Arizona, but I think this is why this is the perfect fit for me, because this is the first time I've ever played with, I feel like, NBA talent all around me. So a lot of areas in my game that people question, I'm able to just put them on display. You know what I'm saying? So my playmaking is something that just comes naturally. I watch a lot of film, and it's just all about just going out there and playing basketball.
So describe what it's like playing for Scott Drew. We talked about this in the preseason a little bit. When you first meet him, you're like, this dude for real. Is he always this nice? What's it been like playing for him and just kind of having him as a coach?
It's different than anything I've ever used to. College basketball coaches, they get into you a little bit. Sean is Coach.
Be careful.
Drew,
hey, be careful. We got his brother here. So
That's all right.
Coach Drew, he'll get into you, but his energy is just so up at you all the time. And when he was recruiting me, I'm thinking it's fake. I'm like, all right, he just want to get me here, and then he's gonna change. But once you get here, you realize that's really who he is, and it's every day. It's the same thing, and it's really motivating to have a coach that's so consistent, never too high, never too low, but always himself every day.
James, the one thing is, as I look at you guys from a scheduling standpoint, you got a big road game coming up next weekend. You got to go out to Oregon. Then you play 2 more home games. As you head into conference play, you feel like there's another level that you guys can still get to? And what are the things that your coaching staff is stressing that you need to do to get to that next level, to become a Big 12 champ, national champ, whatever it may be? Where are you guys focused in right now in the next couple of weeks as you head into the Big 12? What needs to make a jump for your team to be even better?
There's definitely another level. I think that we can get a little bit more efficient in our transition offense. Obviously, Villanova plays at their pace, so it's really hard to run. They do a good job of getting back. But, when we can, I think we can get more efficient. Now, we got enough athletes, so we should just be finishing everything in transition. And believe it or not, I think we can get, a lot better on defense. There are a few times in the first half where they got some good looks, but they just missed them. I think that our talk and our communication can go to another level. And if we continue to do those things, I think we'll be all right.
I don't think anybody expected you guys to be as good as you've been this year. You guys are looking, we think you guys will be the number one, next week. It's looked as good as any team in the country. Has there been any internal pressure of repeating as national champions, just something that hasn't been done? And how long has it been, Jeff? I mean, it's been, 30?
Florida,
right?
Yeah,
Florida.
Yeah.
How long has it been? 20? I mean, that's been a long time. It's been a long time. It hasn't been done often, right?
Yeah.
You guys have any pressure, internal pressure, feeling that responsibility to try to get back?
There's no pressure at all. Last year's team, they were great. They were amazing, but, it's last year's team.
Right.
We got a lot of new guys, and, me being a point guard, I can't come in and hold on to what they did last year. I can't even think about that. I mean, that's their national championship. This team, we're a new team, and all we're focusing on is building our own identity. last year they did a great job of laying the foundation of what we want the school to be. We want to take it to another level, make it a program like maybe a Duke or Kentucky that, attract a lot of people. But, we just focus on getting better each and every day. You can't win a national championship in November or December. So you got to just keep getting better, keep building every game.
Yeah, I can't let you go without asking you about your former teammates in Tucson because they look pretty good right now. Matherin, Tubelis, and Kirk Creesa has more confidence and swagger. And I know you went up against them last year. These
That's
young
probably
guys.
Why he got it. No, that's probably why he got it.
You kicked his you-know-what every day, didn't you?
Yeah. Nah, I'm loving watching those dudes. I watch them, with a smile on my face. Like I said, I think that their situation is better for them and mine is better for me. But I'm still real close to those dudes. We still talk. Kurt reach out to me all the time. But yeah, I'm real happy for what they're doing. I want them to just keep going and hopefully meet up in the tournament or something. But I got nothing but love for those dudes. I'm real happy for those dudes and look out for CeeLo. I think he's just gonna keep getting better and better and better.
Yeah. No, I hope you guys meet at some point because you both have really, really good teams that are better than people thought, quicker than people thought. James Akinjo, listen, good seeing you again. Heck of a performance. If you guys can be better than you were today defensively, man,
we can be a lot
I can't
better.
wait to see it. I can't wait to see it. So good seeing you, man. Congrats on the win. And hopefully I'll see you in Waco soon.
Congrats, James. Good luck the rest of the way.
Good luck, man.
Jeff, I like that shirt.
I got it for you. I'm repping.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right.
There you go. Game high 16 points, 7 rebounds, guys, 5 assists, just 1 turnover. Talk about a good floor game. I mean, again, just kind of made shots when he needed to. The thing that has always impressed me, first time I ever saw him was at the Peach Jam years ago, his toughness. That kid, again, Arch, you know it because you talk to Sean all the time about him. Sean loved him because that kid is just so tough mentally, physically. He gets after it. And honestly, like if Sean didn't leave, James Akinjo is still in Tucson right now. He told me that when I saw him in Waco earlier this year.
So is Jordan Brown, who's having a good year. They had some guys at Arizona. Those guys were young a year ago. And I think James made a good point. He was playing with a lot of freshmen last year.
Right.
There's a lot that goes into, every day and trusting those guys and whatnot, but maybe he did try to do a lot more. But I'll say this, number one, guys from California, tough upbringing. He goes all the way out to Georgetown in the East. You don't see very many guys go west to east and be successful. It's hard. He was freshman of the year in the Big East for Georgetown. Doesn't work at Georgetown. He transfers to Arizona. He sits a year. He doesn't come right away and start playing. He has to sit, go through it, practice every day. And then last year he plays at Arizona and he's all conference and leads the league in assists. And now he's at Baylor. And he's at Baylor. He starts at point guard. He leads them in assists. He's on the #1 team in the country. He wins. He's a tough dude. He wins. And I think at the end of the day, he was probably an integral part to this team in being able to add him to replace all that what they have. He plays a huge role for Scott Drew. Scott Drew knows what he's doing, and he's playing James a lot of minutes. So he's a really good player, but you don't do what he's done, come from where he's come from if you don't have a chip on your shoulder. He plays that way, he acts that way, and it's not false. That's just who he is.
He's been that way.
Baylor wins. Virginia Tech does not. They lose going to Dayton, which Arch knows you just don't go to Dayton. You just don't go. Like, don't schedule.
I don't want to say it to hurt their future schedules, but no, you don't play. You don't play at Dayton. You just
do not do it. It's how many points?
No. The difference is Archie. The difference is you play if you're a bye game. You play there this year anyway. If you're a bye game. If you're a high major, you freaking run from Dayton. You stay the hell away.
Yeah, they've had and we were talking about it. They've had an amazing turnaround as they started the year off. A lot of young guys, lightning in a bottle, kind of get a huge win against Kansas on the bounce. But if you're moving forward, I agree with you. I don't want to play those guys right now, especially playing them there. I think they got to be right up at the top with St. Bonaventure and probably Richmond to be contending for the league championship.
So Virginia Tech loses to Dayton. Florida State loses in Rock Hill, South Carolina. those are two of the teams that we had kind of etched in as NCAA tournament teams, probably two of the top 5 teams in the ACC, along with maybe Carolina and I don't know who else you want to, maybe Virginia in the preseason. And now Syracuse loses yesterday to a bad Georgetown team. And now you've got, again, I'm gonna ask you two, because you're two ACC guys, try defend your league, defend the ACC, boys.
Yeah. Go ahead, Randolph. You're the guy.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate. Listen, I wish I could. I mean, I like, it's funny. One of the surprising teams. I don't want to sound like a homer, but it's Wake. Now, with their non-conference schedule, how do we know their biggest win is Virginia Tech, and we're sitting here talking about how bad Virginia Tech really is right now. So I don't know yet. I'm proud. I'm happy for these guys, but I don't know how good they really are because their non-conference schedule has been what they intended it to be, was just to get some W's. And so the rest of the league, I don't know, guys. Like we said, Florida State, that's the biggest surprise to me. I mean, they're not defending. They can't score. And I know they don't have the pros that they had, but I thought defensively that style would always give people problems, and their length and athleticism, and they're just not getting it done right now. I'm really surprised. They're like 5-4 right now. I mean, they're just not very good. That's hard to say. You hadn't said that in a really long time about
Long
Florida
time. I played when I was at Indiana. We played the COVID cancel year. They probably would have been a 1 seed. They had Forrest,
Yes.
Patrick Williams. I mean, they were as good as it gets.
Yes.
And then we played them the following year with Scotty Barnes, and same, maybe not quite as good, but just right up there with them. And they've had a lot of replacements. I mean, that tier has dropped. But like, Randolph, when I was in the ACC, which would have been late 90s, early 2000s, right before you would have been on your way out, I was at home watching you in the ACC tournament, when I was in high school, crossing guys over and look at them and all that stuff. But the thing about it is, it's always been a league where it's been pros. I mean,
Right.
The ACC has been pros. It was
Right.
pros when you were there. It was pros when I'm there.
Right.
And as I look at the league, their talent is down. I mean, it just is. The best 2 teams in the ACC from a talent perspective this year are Duke and North Carolina.
Yep.
And they just are. If you look at the talent on both teams, they're the 2 most talented teams with the 2 best players. Onwards down the line, there's good players, but there's just not the pros, the guys that you look at and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what we're going to do with this guy. So it's a little bit down in terms of the talent, in my opinion.
I said this to someone the other day, and I want to ask you guys this question. I was talking to some friends from the DC area, and Maryland actually, left and went to the Big Ten. I wonder between that recruiting base in that area is a big hit to the league and the conference and everything, losing it. But I just think nationally from the SEC, football has become so dominant in this that I think the money that has been generated it helped improve the SEC teams, the facilities and everything else to come with it. So the money from the Big Ten and the money from the SEC from the football schools has helped make the basketball schools better, and not every team in the ACC has been able to keep up with that.
Without a doubt, 100.
I think that's a big underestimated thing that people don't think about when you think about basketball. But football has generated so much money. The facilities at those schools are just as good as there is in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when you look at it, that's a great point. The SEC has had a complete makeover in the last 7 to 8 years. You look at the coaches that have come into the league, you look at the facilities, you look at what's gone on. They've had a complete makeover. The Big Ten is very similar, when it comes to exposure, when it's come to resources, when it comes to facilities, all of that stuff. And, I do think that the ACC probably has taken a hit, when it comes to the television market, the money that's been coming in. The revenue isn't the same at the ACC as it is in the SEC. It's not close. They probably have the worst television deal out of all the Power 5 schools right now.
Yes.
And I do think that it's probably been a little bit of a cycle here for the last few years, but this year in the ACC looks to be a little bit historically down with a low number of tournament bids being available. I mean, to be honest with you, I feel like North Carolina, because I just feel like looking at their team, they have the talent. Yes. I feel like Duke and North Carolina will be the cream that sort of rises to the top. I don't know about the other schools as much. just they're going to have to kind of like I said, settle in the league maybe and start to find their niche as they play against the teams that they're always accustomed to playing. But it's an odd year for the league with so many non-conference losses.
Well, even Carolina, listen, I was a Mohegan Sun. They played Purdue tough, but then they got blasted by Tennessee. I mean, they look as disinterested and disconnected as you could. Awful defensively, atrocious,
Yes.
soft as soft can be.
Yes.
Now they beat Michigan State. That was a huge one. They needed that, but they struggled against like Brown, Charleston. They have not looked great, but somebody's got to finish second in this league. And you're right, like their talent level, Caleb Love is still as good as any guard probably in this league. So
hey, you talk about RJ Davis and Caleb Love. That's a young backcourt, but those two guys are really highly regarded. Leaky Black's been there forever. And then, I think the one thing that's probably a little unique about Carolina is Dawson Garcia and Brady Manick are two skilled front court players.
Right.
And they're trying to play a little bit of a different way. But, defensively, they're I think early on you could tell trying to play two bigs at one time isn't easy in college right now. You know what I mean? You're trying to figure that out. But
Roy would try to play three. Come on.
Well, they're going through, I think that's part of it. They're going through an identity change, right? I mean, you're going through those two around the basket bigs where their philosophy was shoot it, go get it off the glass. Well, they've been like arguably the number one rebounding team in the country the last offensive rebounding team in the country the last 5 years. Their best offense was shoot it and go get it. Now you take one of those guys out, you put a skill guy in, it changes their identity. They're no longer that we're going to pound you athletic group where they're and that's what Hubert's done. And we got to give them some time for that. But there's no excuse for them with the collective amount of talent that they have not to be better defensively.
All right. So who's in, guys? Let's go through it right now.
Who's in the tournament?
Who's in from the ACC? I think we all agree Duke and Carolina are going to get in, right? We all in agreement there?
Yes.
I think Duke and Carolina are going to make their way up the ladder here all year long. I think both of them will be fine.
Who else? How many? Who else gets in, Arch?
I have a little bit of faith, and I don't know how Randolph feels about it, but I think Virginia Tech is so old, and I think that, Coach does a great job, that I think they'll at some point in time sort of balance out a little bit. They're a good offensive team. They're well coached, and they have old guys. I think Virginia Tech has a chance to keep going. I don't know if they've done enough in the non-conference, and other than that, I haven't seen a ton of them as much, but, number one, you have Louisville, you have Virginia, you have Syracuse. All three of those teams have had non-conference losses that as they enter league play, they're going to really need to step it up. They don't have like the benefit of the doubt. NC State, Notre Dame, Clemson, and Florida State, they're probably all in the same boat where I don't know if they've had enough in the deal. The key one will be, honestly, Randolph said earlier, is can Forbes at Wake Forest continue to kind of keep going? I don't know if their non-conference is strong enough. I think before it's all said and done that the ACC will find a way to get 5. I think
5 would be a number. I think Louisville's a team we got to add. Yeah,
I would say North Carolina, Duke, Louisville, Virginia Tech, and I'll go. Maybe that fifth team. I'll just put NC State in there because I like them better than everybody else because that's where I went to school.
Well, and let's be fair. I mean, being honest, they blew an opportunity tonight to get that signature win that would have rewarded them late. Had they pulled that game out today, and I felt like they'd have kryptonite to Purdue. If they closed today's game out, would have gone a long way for their confidence and everything. But that would have given them a signature win, if they're on the fence late, that could have propelled the committee to get them in the tournament. Right now, they're back to square one with that.
Yeah, they have one more game against Richmond, which is an important game. They'll play that neutral, and they have Wright State at home. Other than that, they're going in the league play. And I think you got to look at the rest of their schedules, as well, Jeff. Louisville right now had a tough one against DePaul the other night. They really had a tough game. They have at Western Kentucky and then at Kentucky. Now, a lot of people will kind of look at Western Kentucky, but that game at Western in EA Diddle Arena at Western Kentucky for Louisville, that's not going to be easy. And then they have Kentucky. So Louisville really has to get these next 3. I mean, they need to get these next 3 to find a way to get ahead of water. But I think it's a 5-bid league. It'll find its way, but maybe
who's going to make it, guys? You know who's going to find a way? Virginia.
Who?
Somehow
Virginia.
Tony Bennett's going to find a way.
I just can't doubt them.
Right.
This
But
would
they're
be,
how
so
I feel.
bad. Jeff, they're
Like, I know
so
they're
bad.
not good.
They're so bad offensively, and it's so tough to watch. They're a team that will they'll beat Duke. They'll beat a Carolina.
Yep.
And like we saw, they should have lost to Pitt.
right.
Like that's just who they'll be this year because they can't rely on anybody to consistently score for them. But we know they're going to play hard. But I'm like you. If I had to say just for
You know, the other
Conversation.
team is very hard to count out by March will be Syracuse.
The only
I just
problem
have
I
to-
have.
I just
here's
have
my
to think
problem
at
with
some
Syracuse.
point they're gonna kind of get a little better on defense.
They are, and
I
they're going
can't
to
see
beat teams because when they make shots, they really, really make shots. When they look good, they look great. And when they don't make shots, they are a disaster.
First half against Georgetown, I mean, they were clearly the better team. I mean, they were the better team in that first half against Georgetown. But the thing about it is, I don't know how you control it, how you get better at it. But their zone, you can score a lot easier on them than you ever have in the past.
Yeah.
I know they can score, but typically that zone can really, I mean, it can be a hard deal, but teams are scoring on their zone.
You
right
think
now.
they'd be good? Listen, the two kids, he's got his two sons. They've seen that damn zone since they came out of their mother's womb. Like, come on, they should know
they
it.
don't
by-
have the athleticism and the rim protection that they've had
Yeah.
for multiple positions over time. I mean, we talked about it before. They need to have Benny Williams and Samir Torrance out there playing to give them some athleticism in the zone. You couldn't skip the ball against that zone. It was really hard to reverse. I mean, I used to always say, hey, we got to put a bigger guy at the top of the zone so he can reverse it. Because if not, you'd have to be at the logo to reverse the ball against the length of that zone at one time. I mean, it felt like it. So now they're just not as good defensively. But again, they're like Notre Dame. If they're making shots like they did against Pittsburgh, I mean, like they did against Kentucky, like Notre Dame did, those are two teams that can beat anybody because they're going to be able to put five guys on the floor that can shoot the basketball.
It's
Yeah,
going
listen,
to be
it's
it'll be a really interesting ACC season to see if they just all kind of muddle their way through and beat each
Right.
other, or if somebody can like take that next step and get up 2 or 3 games. But I'm going to say that Duke and North Carolina are going to be clear cut the two best teams in the league.
Yeah,
And we can't forget Florida State too. Like they don't have the pro guys, but from a culture, we've been talking about culture of Louisville and Baylor and these programs. Florida State has that culture too, and I can't believe that they're just going to fall off that much. I think they're going to creep up and be one of those 5. I had to say Louisville and Kentucky, Florida State, would be those 2 other teams to add in that 5 after Carolina and Duke.
Yeah.
All right, let's flash back to last night, late night game. A lot of people probably didn't even see it. They probably saw the highlights this morning when they woke up of Alabama's win over Houston. Controversial. Houston goes in, standing toe-to-toe with an Alabama team that a week ago went to Seattle and, like we said, beat Gonzaga. 2 straight weekends that Nate Oates is kind of on center court, so to speak, against a big-time team. And at the end of the game, shot goes up and controversial play, whether it's goaltending or not. J.D. Davison, who might be the most athletic dude in the country, by the way, he goes up and he hits the ball. And is it in the cylinder? Is it not? Well, the refs do not make a call. So therefore, because they don't blow their whistle, they cannot review it. Now, I'm texting last night with a couple of the best officials in the country, and they're saying they should be able to review it. They need to change that rule so that the official doesn't have to blow the whistle to be able to review it. You can review a play like that. Now, as it turns out, I think they made the right call.
I agree with you on it too. I thought it was the right call. I thought it was more
as well.
so a guy just hit the ball in the air. I didn't think it was over the rim, but watching the play, I was so impressed with what JD did. He went up above the rim and got it off the vertical.
Yes.
I mean, he was literally boxing out and no running start, just comes in and goes off the vert, knocks it away. I was really impressed with
He's a
with
freak.
his sense of the play. Like he's an athletic freak.
Yes.
I tell you one thing, I mean, all 3 of those perimeter guys that Alabama throws out there, when they're coming at you, I mean, I thought Quinterly, from a pace perspective, he may have had about as fast as a push in that game as I've seen a guard get downhill in terms of north-south, 75 feet with the ball. they got a three-headed monster out there that can just barrel into you. And I thought the game, I mean, at the end of the day, if you or I were sitting on the Houston bench and we saw the play live, we would have lost our minds because you're trying to win the game. But I thought the referees made the right call. It was tough to watch Houston come out of the timeout and have to take that shot that they took. The shot that they took coming out of the timeout was tough. The offensive rebound was right there. Kid made a hell of a play, knocking the ball out of bounds or whatever it may have been. But I don't think the officials had anything really I mean, they didn't make the call, so there's no reason to look at it. But I didn't think it was a goaltend, after watching it. If you're on the floor, maybe you have a different feeling. But it was a hell of a game, man. Those are two warrior teams, man. Those two teams right there will go at you, and they don't really care, in my opinion, who you are either. I mean, I think that's what both of them have going for them, is that identity.
I mean, listen, if you saw it after the game too, I mean, Marcus Sasser was kind of trying to get to a ref. Kellen Sampson was out of his mind. And then, I don't know if you guys saw it retweeted earlier today, but Jamal Sheed, he literally is picking up the trash on the floor.
Yeah.
After all this happens, like one of the classiest things I've ever seen. Everybody else is losing their mind. And maybe that's Jamal Sheed's way from Houston of just kind of, compartmentalizing it or selling, whatever it was. I couldn't believe it as I was watching him literally for like 30 seconds, pick up all the trash on the ground and throw it away in the garbage.
I mean, I didn't think it was goaltender one. You don't want to lose a game like that. It would have been a heck of a win for those guys. Neither team deserved to lose. I mean, it was a hard-fought, tough game. But, again, I also don't want to see an official blow his whistle at the end of a game to decide a game at that match. Unless
let's put it on the other end.
You would have lost your mind. Oaks would have lost his mind.
Can you imagine the other side in that arena and those fans if he'd have blown the whistle and called goal? I mean,
every trash can in the building would have been thrown on the floor at that point. Are you kidding me? There's not a ref in the country that's blowing a whistle on that one, making that a.
Hey, she wouldn't have enough time to pick up all that trash.
That's very, very true.
He would not have had enough time.
Couple scores before we check out, and we'll preview one game tonight. But Florida, Maryland, they're a deadlock right now, 33-all. USC tied with Long Beach State. How about the Fighting Dan Munsons are battling USC? We got a big one tonight, boys. Well, I don't know if it's big, but it's meaningful now. Not just because our boy Dagan is a Seton Hall guy, but we got Rutgers coming up, the big win against Purdue, against Seton Hall, and Kevin Willard. Man, like the job Kevin Willard has done with this Seton Hall program, he cannot get enough praise. And I keep saying it, like he's got to be in the equation for the Maryland Open. Like if you're Damon Evans, the AD at Maryland, he's got to be on your short list, doesn't he?
Oh, without question. I mean, Kevin's a big game coach who's done an unbelievable job at Seton Hall. And, this year is no different. He's built a great culture there. He's guys with a hard edge. But Kevin doesn't get enough credit, I don't think, for the way he coaches. I mean, he can beat you a lot of different ways. They're very good on offense. They run good stuff. Defensively, they're very tough. They can press. They do a lot of different types of things. From a style perspective, Kevin's style would work at Maryland great. From a recruiting background standpoint, I mean, he's in the East, and Maryland's going to be built on the Mid-Atlantic with the DMV in the East. But Kevin Kevin to me is one of the best coaches in the country. If anybody wanted to talk to Kevin, it's a good idea.
I think his personality fits the job as well. I'm cheering for Danny, knowing well. I just think Danny's is placed in a tough situation. Not being there in the past, and then Turd stepping down and he's stepping in. He's having to learn his players as he's trying to navigate this difficult situation. So I'm really cheering for him, but I'm hoping they get the game today and go a long ways. I got my fingers crossed for him. But again, a guy like Kevin is a personality fit for the DMV as well. And that's going to matter because for Maryland to get back to where they want to be, I think that's one of the things that have hurt them in Georgetown is that the talent has gone elsewhere. And that's been one of the most talented areas in the country, if not the best. And the players are leaving there, going elsewhere. And who's at the helm of that job needs to be able to retain the talent.
Yeah.
7:30 tonight, Rutgers, Seton Hall. I got a message for you, Arch, from John Fana. He says he's drunk in the Newark River, ready for tip-off right now. He's ready to go. He's probably drunk. no shirt on. It's probably 22 degrees out there, and Van is going out of his mind, ready for the big Rutgers Seton Hall matchup.
I mean, I can only imagine how heated up he is right now, getting ready for that game. That's going to be a tough game for. It's a tough game in general, but playing at Seton Hall is going to be hard for Rutgers tonight. They're still down Geo. They're still down Geo Baker. But Coach Piker will have them ready. They take a lot of pride. That was a big win the other night. They should have a boost of confidence. But at Seton Hall, with what Seton Hall has done up until this point, Seton Hall's got to have the edge in that game tonight.
All right. Well, listen, thanks to everybody for joining us. Thanks to James Akinjo for jumping on. Arch, Randolph, we're off tomorrow night, Field of 68 after dark, but Tuesday we will have John Fana on, and we'll also have a pair of former Pitt Panthers, Arch's brother Sean and Ashton Gibbs, so they can commiserate on their alma mater and how crappy they are. They can all do it together, and maybe Fana can brag a little bit if Seton Hall takes down Rutgers tonight. So make sure you join us Tuesday night. Thanks again. Field of 68's after dark.